are back with a brand new monthly recap and breakdown of all the new movies I saw for the month of July. A very hot month, both in and out of the theater, and particularly outside of the theater. I live in St. Louis, and as Nelly would say, it is hot in here, and I don't like it. But we're talking about stuff I saw in theaters. The good, the bad, and the not so good, and the in-between. We'll discuss that in today's breakdown. But also, by the end of the breakdown, I'll also do a ranking of all the movies I saw from my least favorite to my favorite. So it's going to be a fun time, and I'm ready to get going. But before we get into it, man, I want to take this time to thank you all for watching this. If you're watching this on YouTube, I appreciate you. If you can do all the YouTube algorithm stuff, leaving a like, sharing this video, also sharing your thoughts in the comments below. What new movie was your favorite? What was your least favorite? What surprised you? What disappointed you? And how would you rank the new movie you saw for the first time? In the comments, let me know. And also consider subscribing if you're watching this for the first time. But this is also will be available on podcast. So if you want to listen to my voice, you want to hear this breakdown in podcast form, whether that's on Apple or on Spotify, where you can watch or listen, I would appreciate if you all can leave a like there, as well as consider subscribing to the podcast. So with all that being said, let's have some fun. So as I did last month, I will be reading my diary to you all from my Letterboxd, which a quick plug. If you're wanting to hear, or I should say read a review from me and not watch it or listen to one, 9 times out of 10, if I don't have like a video review on my YouTube or post it somewhere on social media, I probably have a written review on my Letterboxd. So you can follow me on Letterboxd. Link to that can be found in the description of this video. So let me pull up my diary here, and I did 10 logs. I saw 10 new movies. 9 of them were in theaters, and 1 of them I got a screener link to. So let's get into it, man. So the first one on the list, we started off the month pretty low. We're talking about Jurassic World Rebirth. Man, where do I even begin? So first and foremost, I won't rehash a lot of the stuff I already said. I have a full review written and also a video review for it, but I was excited, man. I was excited about the idea of bringing back the original writer from the first 2 Jurassic Parks. I was excited about Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, Jonathan Bailey, Gareth Edwards. I'm a fan of all the pieces to the puzzle, but unfortunately these pieces did not fit together for me. I love dinosaurs. I love this world. Jurassic Park is one of my favorite films of all time, and I always go back to the well hoping that we can get something that at least gives you the feeling. And there's been some, there's been obviously sequels that I've liked in the franchise, but the worlds, I liked the first Jurassic World 2015 with Chris Pratt. I did not like Fallen Kingdom. I did not like, Dominion? And this is in that batch of films that I just did not like. It was the cardinal sin for me in cinema, and that's a boring movie. It was a really boring movie. I don't even blame the actors. It's just, it didn't have a lot going for it. They didn't really have much personality, but I just felt like the dinosaurs didn't want to be there. The characters didn't want to be there. No one wanted to be there. It was just kind of a lifeless film. I think I even said in my review, kind of speaking of rehashing this feeling of not being pleased with this franchise just keeps rehashing the same thing of like, what did I say in my review? Speaking of recycle, the nostalgia is laid on so thick that you could spread it on toast. Bars number 1. Again, my reviews are pretty funny. I'll just pat myself on the back for that bar there. But yeah, man, it's just, they're trying to recreate these iconic moments, and it just didn't land for me from a narrative perspective. Again, just from the story, it just was a bland, boring, forgettable movie. And I'm going to read the last part of my written review on Letterboxd. It says Jurassic World Rebirth tries to erase the previous world films and awkwardly mimics the original park, resulting in a forgettable, predictable mess with a pointless ending. Universal, it's time to let this franchise rest. Listen to this part here. It's not evolving, it's just becoming a fossil. And I stand by that. I did not like this film, as you all can see on the screen. I gave it a 2 out of 5. I will not be rewatching this ever again. I was very disappointed by this film, and it made money. I'll see the next one, but I was not a fan of Jurassic World Rebirth. Now on to my most anticipated movie of 2025, and that is James Gunn's Superman. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm a lifelong DC fan, and what comes with being a lifelong DC fan is a roller coaster of emotions. I think DC has produced some of the greatest comic book movies of all time. I also think that DC has produced some of the worst comic book of all time, movies of all time, and more so in recent memory. So this movie came with a lot of baggage. Again, excitement. I'm a James Gunn fan. I love the cast he put together, and I was like really hyped from all of the marketing and everything leading up to the film. And as you all can see, I gave it a 3 out of 5. on my scale. Obviously, it's not a great film, but it's also not a bad film. It's just a really solid movie through and through. I thought, number one, James Gunn really embraced the comic book elements that I enjoy about Superman and just the world that he built and how we just jump right into the world and we catch up with the narrative, which is a fun experience, not having to rehash the origins and meeting this character, that character, and wasting time, essentially. I like how we just jump right into the story. I really enjoyed the casting. I think David Corenswet plays a phenomenal Superman. I love Rachel as Lois. I'm a big fan of Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. Huge Eddie Gathacki fan as Mr. Riffy. And the whole cast, for the most part, was really A+ for me. And it has heart, has fun moments, has some cool visual flair. My issues with this film, again, written review available, full review available. It's just a little bit of too much of everything, right? It's just like at some points I didn't feel like Superman was the lead character. The Justice Gang was hit or miss for me. The tone of the film was hit or miss for me. And it just like, it took a while to find its footing narratively, right? It was like these things were just happening and it was just kind of all over the place for me at points. But again, I walked out feeling pretty happy about the prospect of the future of not only these characters, but the DCU, this being the launch of the DC universe. So again, I wouldn't say it was disappointing. It didn't quite live up to my expectations, but again, I think it's a solid start. And I've only seen it once, maybe when I revisit it and kind of know what I'm walking into, maybe I'll appreciate things a little bit more. But as it stands, like I said, a solid movie to kick off the DCU, and excited to see we're getting Peacemaker next month. We're getting Lanterns. We're getting Supergirl and Clayface next year. So I'm excited for the prospect of what's to come. But again, I thought this was a solid way to kick off this new universe. So speaking of roller coasters, we are now talking about Edington, another one of my most anticipated films of the year, because another thing, if you don't know about me, I am a huge Ari Aster fan. I put him in the same boat as Jordan Peele, Robert Eggers, James Wan, Jennifer Kent. Like, these to me are like the pillars of like the new wave of horror films and just great storytellers in general. But I'm a big Ari Aster fan. Hereditary, Midsommar. I'm one of the few that enjoy Beau Was Afraid for what it was, and I was really excited for Edington. And this was something that was disappointing because I was locked in to most of the first half, this modern Western, contemporary Western, following Joaquin Phoenix main character going against Pedro Pascal, them going back and forth, trying to take the power of this small town during the pandemic. And I was like, oh, it was surprisingly funny than I anticipated. There was some interesting commentary being had about during that time period, the pandemic, and all the different social commentaries that could be had in a narrative like that. But then at a certain point, I just kind of threw my hands up because I was like, I don't care about the story. I don't care about these characters. And when it comes to, and I'm not even a political person, but when it comes to like the political things that were thrown in this film, they just felt like a montage of like clip outs of like, oh, you guys remember Black Lives Matter? You remember the mask issue where people want to wear masks, not want to wear? It was just like throwing stuff at the wall to see that would stick, and none of it stuck for me. It was just kind of a pass through of all the things that went on. And then on top of that, these supporting characters who Emma Stone, Austin Butler were forgotten about, and it just became pretty uninteresting for me. And by the end I couldn't wait for the movie to end. It was way too long, especially for characters. Again, I didn't care what was going on like the last hour of the movie. So with all that said, I'm still a fan of all of these actors. I'm still a fan of Ari. I'm looking forward to his next project, but this is one of those, like the same way people feel about, I guess, Beau Was Afraid, like they couldn't connect to it. It just didn't work for them. That's how I feel about Editing. It was just a mess of a movie, and it was, more importantly, it was just an uninteresting movie for me, at least. Now, getting into a movie that I wasn't familiar about until like maybe 3 or 4 days before I actually watched it, thanks to a PR team that sent me the link for it, and that is Sovereign, a film that, again, went under my radar. It has a really good cast, led by Nick Offerman and Jacob Tremblay, who, let me just go on a side tangent. Oh my goodness, I feel so old. I remember watching Jacob in Room, and he was 8 or 9, if maybe even younger than that, and just seeing him grow up, and I felt old. I feel really old seeing him in this film. I think he's like 17 or 18 now, but neither here nor there. What an interesting movie. I knew very little about the sovereign citizenship and how people of that community operate. It's a very interesting way of living. How no judgment here, but it is a very interesting way to live your life, making your own rules and not abiding by governmental rules and all the different stuff. Again, full review you can hear if you're not familiar with Sovereign. I kind of talk about what it means in my review, but nonetheless, really interesting narrative. This is a slow burn drama about Nick Offerman's character, who is a part of this community. He has has his own following of people that take his advice about how to navigate life and how to not listen to police officers, not pay your bills, not live by being a law-abiding citizen type of a situation. And he's trying to indoctrinate his son into that lifestyle. And Jacob Tremblay's like 16, 17, trying to figure out who he wants to be, wants to veer away from his father's belief, but at the same time, he loves his dad, and he's he's living in both worlds. And unfortunately, what comes with that is a tragic story. I won't give too much away, but I was really engaged. I was really locked into the narrative. I love the performances. My only issues with this film is it has this parallel story that focuses on Dennis Quaid's character, who's a police officer, and he has a son of his own who has his own family. And they're trying to tell the parallel stories of like the pressures your parents can put on you and how, you're trying to follow in their footsteps and the good and bad that comes with that. And that subplot just felt kind of I don't want to say tacked on. It just wasn't interesting to me. Like whenever we would cut to them, it kind of slowed down the momentum, and I just didn't really care for that particular set of storytelling, and I didn't really care for that story that we were getting with those characters. But again, putting that aside, it's a pretty powerful movie. How the tragedy of what happens is displayed on screen. Really strong performances, and again, it was eye-opening to see the set of people, how they live on the fringes of society and how they operate. Was really fascinating to watch. So I know it was in theaters when I saw it. I got a screener link. I don't know if it's still in theaters, but I'm pretty sure that if it's not in theaters, it'll be available to stream. And it's something I would recommend. A really interesting, like I said, slow burn. It takes a little bit to get going, but it's a pretty riveting story that I was really pleased by, and I would highly recommend you all check it out. If you get the opportunity to check it out, definitely do so. All right, moving on. I'm noticing a pattern here. Like I would like a movie, not like a movie, like a movie, not like a movie. The next one on my list is one of the worst movies I've seen all year, and that is the legacy sequel of I Know What You Did Last Summer. I wouldn't say I was disappointed because I wasn't overly excited for the film, but I'm a 90s baby, so I grew up in the slasher, Screams, I Know What You Did Last Summer, urban legends of the world. So I was, I really enjoyed the first I Know What You Did Last Summer, 1997 or 98. I liked the second one. I had fun with that one. The less we talk about the third one, the better. And I never watched a TV show, but nonetheless, I'm a fan of this franchise. I was optimistic about the cast and the crew. There's some people I was familiar with, some people I wasn't. And I went in with an open mind, and I walked out pretty mindless because I couldn't believe how bad this movie was. I know there's like a sector of people online that really roots for this film, and I think everyone should have a film they can relate to and connect to. That just wasn't the film for me. I thought that I didn't blame the acting. Like I like all the young actors, Madeline Klein, Chase, and all the people that was involved. Freddie Prinze coming back and Jennifer Love Hewitt coming back. Like the acting was fine for the most part. It was just the dialogue was so bad. Like I understand they were trying to tap into a much younger generation than me, and I don't even think they talk like that. As far as like in a normal conversation, the way these characters were talking to one another just felt like they were given a script that was made by TikTok, comment section of TikTok, and it was just pretty infuriating to listen to these people interact with each other. On top of the way the film is kind of pieced together, it was just didn't really have any flair, didn't really have any bite to it. I know some people say this is like the bloodiest, goriest one. I'm like, I didn't really get that. It didn't work for me. Only parts about this film that I enjoyed was the mid-credit scene and the end of the movie. Everything else was just, and then I'm being facetious, there were some moments every now and then I enjoyed, but for the most part, I just found it to be a drag to get through this movie. And I think it broke even, so there may be another one. And if there is, I'll probably drag myself just to see how they put it together. But as far as this iteration of the film goes, like I said, one of the worst films I've seen in the year. And to keep the tradition going, now we're talking about a movie I really enjoy. And this, as of right now, this is probably in my top 15, top 20 movies of the year. And it may go up depending on how the rest of the year ends out. But we're talking about A24, Sorry Baby, which I knew, and I've been doing this for probably about a year and a half, where when it comes to like indie studios, A24, Neon, studios like that, if I am any ounce interested, I stay away from teasers, trailers, and I go in blind. And I did that with Sorry Baby. I didn't know who. I knew who was in it. I know Naomi Ackie was in it, and Lucas Hedges was in it, but I didn't know anything about the narrative and what it was about. So I went in and just let this film wash over me in the best way possible. I don't want to give too much away, but it's essentially following this character by the name of Agnes, who goes through a particular situation that is something that you can't shake off easily, depending on the individual and depending on how, what happened. But what happens to her is pretty tragic. And we're seeing her, the way the story's told is like we see her at a certain point in her life. We see what the event was, and we see how, as she's trying to move on as best as she can. And in between that, it's it sounds like maybe a depressing movie, which it can be depressing, especially if you're triggered by the subject matter that it tackles. But it did this thing where it had such a interesting tone, and for the tone and for the subject matter and the tone that it brings to this film was just so refreshing. Because again, I don't want to give away the situation, but the situation that she finds herself in, we've seen it 1,000 times before, and most of the time a lot of directors, and rightfully so, takes it the more serious approach and makes it kind of predictable how things play out, where this one was just like not laughing at what happened, but like she's trying to make light of what happened. She's trying to carry on with who she is as a person and how she's trying to navigate through life. And I just found this film to be extremely beautiful. I found it to be very funny. I really love the friendship that's in this movie. I love the relationships that's in this movie. And this is a first-time director, Eva Victor, I believe her name is. She also wrote this film. She also stars in this film. And this is one of those movies where I will always see what she's doing next, because I was just so impressed by, again, the way she handled the subject matter, the tone of the film, the comedy of the film, the seriousness of the film. And it's just a really well put together movie. And it's a weird, A24, I love them, but they have some weird releases when it comes to like promoting their stuff. It had a limited release at the end of July, and then I think has a wider release at the beginning of August. But keep it on your radar. If it is available in your town, check it out. If not, wait till it becomes available on streaming. I highly recommend it. It's a really well-made film. And the good streak of movies continue. This is part of the big three of the month. Jurassic Park, we had Superman, and now we have the Fantastic Four, which I saw about a week and a half ago. And not to pit the two against each other in regards to, as I spoke about it, I did not like Jurassic World, but I enjoyed Fantastic Four more than I enjoyed Superman, which again, as a DC fan, I enjoy Marvel, love Marvel, but I was anticipating to be the other way around, but pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this film. First and foremost, man, I am such a fan of Mac Shackman. I've been a fan of his since he was directing episodes of It's Sunny in Philadelphia. He's done things on Game of Thrones, Succession, and and then of course, WandaVision, and he has flair. He has what I hope Marvel in this new phases and in this new reboot after Secret Wars, I hope they pick directors that have their own voice. They're not just plugged in into a machine and just doing what Marvel wants them to do. Matt brought the fire, man. Like, he was cooking with this film. Like, I really came to love this cast. I was a little bit skeptical about, Pedro, and, I like all of them individually. I like Pedro as an actor. I like Vanessa as an actor. I like Joseph and Eben, but I didn't know if they were going to mesh well together as a family, as Marvel's first family, but they really did. I love this cast. Visually, oh my goodness, this is one of the best looking Marvel films to date and maybe of all time, especially the space exploration that we get. Love the design of Silver Surfer, and what she was doing in this film was awesome. Galactus, visually stunning in regards to the scope and scale of the character. I like again, very similar to Superman, we're thrown into the world, we're in a new world, we don't have to have the baggage of the MCU, and it's a hero story. I just love the family unit, and I love how they come together and what they fight for, what they stand for. It has its shortcomings, as I talked about in my further review, as far as the second half feels a bit rushed. I wish Ben could have had more fleshing out to do. I wish that things didn't come as easy, and also the third act wraps things up pretty easily, and the CGI baby at times was a little distracting. But putting that aside, I thought this was easily one of the better films in recent memory with the MCU, and I have it's at a 3.5 for me right now, but I can anticipate that going up on a second rewatch, because I was really, again, engaged in the story, even though some things were rushed, but I was really engaged with these characters. I'm really excited for these characters. The stinger at the end really leads into the future of not only these characters, but also leads into Doomsday. So overall, this was a win for Marvel. But also a win for me, because again, it's been a roller coaster for Marvel films, from earlier this year with Captain America, which I did not like, but then Thunderbolts I liked, and obviously I like this. So hopefully this is building momentum for Spider-Man, Doomsday, and for the future of Marvel. And this was the first steps in doing so. So I really enjoyed this film. All right, next on my list is a romantic comedy by the name of Oh Hi, a very, very charming independent film that I believe Sony Pictures Classics produced this movie. Very similar to Sorry Baby. This was a film I knew absolutely nothing about. Got my press screening. I saw the cast. I'm a big fan of Molly Gordon. Shout out to Claire Bear from The Bear, but also I've been a fan of hers prior to The Bear. And Logan Lerman, who I think I didn't mention it earlier when I was talking about Sorry Baby, Lucas Hedges. I'm a big fan of his, but I put them in the same boat. Like, I want more of them. Like, they're such great actors and they do such a great job in their roles. But Logan Lerman, man, and Molly Gordon, chemistry off the charts. Really enjoyed their chemistry without giving too much away. The premise is kind of simple. We have this, I put in quotations, couple going on their first vacation together, and one of the members of this couple, quotations, find out that the other one really didn't even know they were in a relationship. And what comes with that is, think of Misery meets Gerald's Game meets How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. It's a really interesting mashup that I just mentioned. It's not a horror film by any means, but it has a similar idea where someone is put in a position for a long period of time and has to figure out a way to make it out. It's a really interesting film, man. It's a charming film. It is a film that gets better as it goes along, because when it starts off, I'm like, oh, this is just like a stereotypical rom-com, but it is a rom-com at the end of the day, but it has a lot more bite to it than I was anticipating. Again, the supporting cast was great in this film. It's really clever, punchy writing. It has some really good laughs every now and then. And just, again, it's one of those movies where 90-minute breezy movie, but it's just like, oh man, this is just a really solid movie with a really good cast. Now, moving on to a film that wasn't on my most anticipated, but when I heard about it earlier at the film festivals, it became one of my most anticipated for the rest of the year, and that is Neons Together, starring the real-life couple, Dave Franco and Allison Brie. And this is one of those films that I don't want to give too much away. I'm going to see what the synopsis says. With a move to the countryside already testing the limits of the couple's relationship, a supernatural encounter begins an extreme transformation of their love, their lives, and their flesh. Pretty good synopsis and sums up what you can expect. There's a couple that are at a point in their relationship where they are starting to realize that they are really codependent on one another, and they really have kind of lost who they are as individuals, and they move to the countryside because Alison Brie's character gets a job opportunity, and Dave follows her, and he's kind of left his artistic side. He's a recording artist, and he's kind of dabbling in the world, trying to take off, but at the same time is kind of afraid, again, because of the codependency of it all. But with all that being said, they come across this supernatural situation that bonds them together, and with that comes some pretty awesome body horror in this movie. As a fan of body horror, David Cronenberg movies and so many other great directors that have done, even last year, The Substance, like, I'm a fan of the subgenre body horror, and this does it right. The practical effects, the grotesque nature of the body horror was really well done. Again, I love practicality, and the film it blends CGI every now and then, but it's a really good balance of the CGI and the practicality. The chemistry of our real life couple really works. It feels like you're watching a relationship that's been around for a while and is reaching a point that's at a breaking point. And I thought they both brought different things to their characters. Like, I thought Dave Franco really brought the levity to the film, and also Allison Brie brought more of the dramatics to the film. And every now and then they switch spots in regards to who's carrying what that the film needs at that point. And it's a really interesting film. As I referred to in my review, there's some shortcomings in the narrative. There's some shortcomings on fleshing things out. And the supernatural element of the film was probably the more weaker part. Not what happens to them, but like the explanation of where it stems from felt a little shortchanged and underdeveloped for me. But nonetheless, I don't think, when I spoke about it, about the positive buzz out of the film festivals, people were saying this will be one of the best horror films of the year. I can see it being in the conversation for one of, not the best for my taste, but it is a really good time. It's more rom-com than I was anticipating. It has the horror elements, but more of a creepy horror movie, more than like a straight up horror. But it's a really good time, man. As I'm recording this will be available on the second to last day of the month. I believe it comes out on the 30th, but check it out. And when you do, I think you'll have a good time. And last but not least, as I'm recording this, I saw this film last night. I don't have my full review available, but by the time this video is out, the embargo would have lifted, so I can talk about it openly. And that is the NEA Gun Legacy sequel, another Legacy sequel. And very similar to I Know What You Did Last Summer. Not as bad, but it just didn't really work for me. I was so interested in seeing this movie because I've seen the original. I saw 1, 2 in, NEA Gun 33 and a half or whatever. And I like that style of comedy, but I liked it when it was in the 80s and the 90s. I don't know if slapstick, over-the-top parody comedies kind of work in today's society. And listen, I'll just say this, as again, after seeing it last night, it definitely has its audience, because my audience was eating this up. They were having the time of their life. Me, not so much. I do give praise to at least it sticking to the bit and sticking to the commitment of like, there's jokes like every minute of this movie, and those jokes just didn't land for me. You know, comedy is very subjective. You know, there were moments, there was like a handful of times that I remember laughing, and it was more of like the raunchy, uncomfortable comedy that I wish the film would have leaned more into. But, you know, I thought Liam was solid in the role. I thought Pam Anderson was really good in the role. I really enjoyed her performance and her character. You know, their chemistry was great. And again, there are some moments that I laughed, you know, again, more raunchy, more risky jokes that I had a good time with, but everything else was just, you know, fart jokes, poop jokes, dick jokes, like that stuff to me just doesn't, you know, it's just, it didn't really, and again, I wasn't going to this film like I want a well thought out story. Like, these movies aren't meant for like, and they even poke fun of like plot devices and stuff like that. It's just, the jokes just ultimately didn't land for me personally, just for my personal sensibilities as comedy. Just like I lean more towards scary movies, 21, 22 Jump Street, like that type of over the top self-reverence type of comedy where it's a little bit more clever and not like low hanging fruit comedy. But again, to each their own. I have a further review discussing more of my thoughts, but it just didn't work for me at the end of the day. But with that said, you might love it, you might like it. It just wasn't for me. So with all that said, I saw again 10 new releases in the month of July, and here is how I would rank those movies from my least favorite to my favorite. Coming in at number 10 is I Know What You Did Last Summer, and for me, I wish I didn't know what they did last summer because I didn't care, because it was such a bad movie. That is, again, one of the worst movies I saw of this year. Coming in at number 9 is another film that I was disappointed by, and that is Jurassic World Rebirth. Pointless, boring, lifeless, unnecessary sequel. Coming in number 8 is The NEA Gun. Again, as I talked about at the end of this video, it's just the comedy. There was every now and then I laughed, but it was just too far in between, and it was just wasn't my taste in comedy. So it's coming in number 8. Number 7, huge disappointment because I'm such a big fan of everyone involved, but that is Ari Aster's Edington. As I talked about in the video, I just felt like it was going good for a while, and then it just completely fell off the cliff for me personally. Moving on to my number 6, and that is Sovereign, a really strong drama with some really great performances that I would recommend you all check out when it's available to stream. Now we're getting into my top 5, and coming in number 5 is Oh Hey, again a charming romantic comedy that I really thoroughly enjoyed. Number 4 for me is James Gunn's Superman. Number 3 is the neon body horror comedy, rom-com comedy by the name of Together. Number 2 is Fantastic Four, and then my number 1 movie that I saw for the month of July is A24's Sorry Baby. So there you have it, my roundup, my recap, my breakdown of all 10 films that I saw in the previous month. Again, just looking at the month, some highs, some in-betweens, and some low lows. But again, I would say I walked out pretty happy with the overall experience of the movies I saw. And, you know, we're rounding out to summer, and there's some things I'm excited for. Weapons coming out next month that I'm looking forward to. But again, a solid month. I see one of these movies maybe being in my top 10, and then the rest kind of being in that, 15 to 20 range, and then some of them being in at the bottom of the barrel. But nonetheless, that is my breakdown for the month of July. Thank you all for making it to this point in the video. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, I appreciate you. If you enjoyed the commentary, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this video to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about movies just as much as we do. Share your thoughts on what new movie did you see? What was your favorite, your least favorite, your most disappointing movie you saw, your most surprising movie, movie of the month and rank them if you guys want to in the comments below. And then again, if you're listening to this on podcast, whether it's on Apple or on Spotify, leave a like, share the audio, also the video if it's on Spotify, and also share your list in the comments below. You all are awesome. Again, August is going to be slowing down a little bit in movies. I think there's only like 3 or 4 movies I'm looking forward to seeing. There's some TV shows I'm really excited for, but I'll be back next month to give you all my rundown. And in between then, keep an eye out for reviews, TV, movie breakdowns, out of theater breakdowns, and everything in between. Again, thank you all for watching or listening. You all stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next breakdown.